Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my presentation number 9. Um, this is actually, I need to acknowledge here that this is actually my first anniversary presentation. I joined the group almost exactly a year ago. So it's nice to come a full circle in a year and acknowledge that I'm still very happily engaged in this group, and I'm growing more and more fond of what is a Sunday morning for me in um, in the time zone where I've spent most of my time. Today, I'm beginning a series on personal finance. I don't know how many parts this is going to be, but I don't think I've discussed it too much. But I did, even before I ever met Derek and the ecosystem that through which we've connected. I've studied personal finance quite a bit. Uh, I attended live trainings in Finland very actively. Uh, there's a company that specializes in it, and it was very much like a huge mastermind of people who were interested in personal finance and investing and like all things wealth and money. And they have a absolutely fantastic personal finance training weekend. I've attended it like 3 or 4 times, and it's something that I recommend very warmly to anyone, regardless of your financial circumstance. Like, it's very useful for a student, it's very useful for a business person, like an entrepreneur or anyone, because it digs into the psychology of how to not spend $4 a day on latte. It's like it's not tips and tricks. It's psychology, and it's presented in a very tangible and very interesting way. So I figured that I'd start a series where I share what I've learned from there. And today we'll be digging into personal finance, part 1, psychology, and your personal money story. Why give a shit? Now, I don't need to convince anyone in this group why personal finance is an important topic and why wealth building is somehow relevant for us. Like, this is a mastermind revolving around wealth and generating wealth, so I don't need to convince anyone. But I will give you actually a few very interesting statistics. These are from Finland, so they are country specific, but they are pretty interesting, and they would probably apply to some degree in other countries as well. So first of all, arguments over finances or money are the biggest source of conflict in romantic relationships in Finland, statistically speaking. That is actually something that makes sense when you think about it, but it's not necessarily intuitive. A poll of 2,500 people ranked financial problems as the #1 source of professional distress. And this was the best way I could come up with translating this sentence. What I mean by this is that if you're feeling unwell at work, if you're not feeling happy at your workplace, the highest likelihood of the biggest reason behind it is likely that you have money problems, and that is generating a lot of the anxiety there. And this is very Finnish, is that the event that would induce the most amount of shame for a Finnish person would be to publicly have a payment fail. Which, for example, if you go to a grocery store and your payment card doesn't work, like, that induces the biggest amount of shame you can imagine in your life. So these things are actually there is a lot of emotion and there is a lot of psychology that has to do with money, because money is something that we use almost every day anyway. So it is definitely worth digging into the psychology of it and understanding our own money behavior a little bit better. So we'll be digging into our own money personas today, and becoming aware of them is the first step in the case you want to change something as well. I do remember that there was a presentation some months ago, I don't remember by who was touching a little bit on a similar subject, if I don't remember wrong, but I don't think we've talked about money personas before. So let us dig in. So the personal money story. This is effectively your personal relationship with money, and this is most vividly dictated by how it is programmed into our subconscious, and that is in turn dictated mostly by our history, especially our childhood. So as we all, I'm pretty sure we are strongly aware that your subconscious mind processes information automatically and is capable of processing massive amounts of it at the same time. Our conscious mind can only think about a few things, like can only handle a very limited amount of information at once. So it is the subconscious that dictates most of our emotions and our instinctive behavior when it comes to money and finances. So how it is programmed plays a key role, and how it gets programmed starts very early in childhood. So next, we're going to go through 3 different ways on how the subconscious has been programmed in our lifetime historically. So programming the subconscious. Verbal. We only start developing the capacity to question information presented to us starting around the age of 6. Until then, everything an authority figure, which would in this case mostly be your parents, but also your grandparents or maybe older siblings, or anyone that you as a toddler would consider a person of authority or for whatever reason. So whatever they tell us tends to go directly into our subconscious as some degree of a truth. So the programming of our subconscious starts there. Conversations around money when you were a kid actually play a key role. So there's like where you grew up, what kind of an environment that was, does have a strong impact. For example, starting with, did you grow up in the countryside, or were you a city kid? Where you grew up, like the conversations around money and how the world functions or what's going on in the world does change as a function of countryside versus city kid. I had a bit of a both personally, because I grew up when I was a kid. I grew up, and when I was 12, we moved into a sizable town, and there was a world of difference on what the conversations around the world in general was like. So this does make a strong impact. How did your grandparents, for example, how did they talk about money? I still remember some of the conversations I had with my grandfather, who's been now passed away for 15 years, but I still have some flashes from history about talking about money with him. Where rich people talked about as good or bad people makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because if the evil rich people do this and that, like that, if you grow up in a surrounding, in an environment where conversation is like that, it's very easy to create a negative association with money when rich people are bad, and vice versa, obviously. And then there's also this like, what is the literal language regarding money? And I'm gonna give an example story of how this might program your subconscious. And this example story is it's kind of cutting some corners and oversimplifying things, but it'll describe how the mechanism works. So let's imagine for a while that you're 2 years old. You've just learned to speak and use basic language, and you can understand your parents, like you can understand basic vocabulary, and you can sort of verbalize your needs already. So you're crawling on all fours on kitchen floor, and lo and behold, you see something shiny. A few meters away, you see something shiny on the floor. You will later in life learn that the name for said object is a coin. Someone has dropped a coin on the floor, and but you don't know what it is. So you go and investigate. You're a little bit scared at first because you don't know if it's going to poke at you, or maybe it's going to attack you in some way. But as you crawl closer and you investigate the shiny object, you determine that, oh, this is probably safe. Like this is probably not going to harm me in any way. So then you might try to pick it up and you try to maybe rattle it, and maybe it's going to make a funny sound. Doesn't really do anything like that. And finally, you will do the ultimate test, which is obviously the taste test. Like, how does this taste? So you put it in your mouth. And as you put it in your mouth, your mom all of a sudden comes from behind the corner and realizes what you're doing, and scared that you will immediately choke in the coin, she will say that, oh, take that dirty coin out of your mouth. Take that dirty coin out of your mouth. Dirty coin. Dirty coin. The coin isn't evil, but your mom just called it dirty because it physically is dirty, and like licking or putting a coin in your mouth is not a good idea. Like the intention is incredibly good here, but this kind of a thing, this kind of an experience, which you probably don't remember if anything like this ever happened to you, this will create an association in your mind that coin dirty, money dirty. So the programming starts there. So if you have a lot of experiences like this, you might have been building anxiety and fear, and like this sort of like repulsion towards money from a very, very early age. This is just an example, but this is how the programming at a pretty extreme and a simple example works. Number 2, modeling / imitation. How did you observe your environment where you grew up relative to money? So this is when you start getting a little bit older, and you start being more aware of your surroundings, and you start being more sort of vigilant of what's going on around you. Now, especially if there is a conflict between what is said about money and what's done about it, is a powerful way to generate confusion around the subject. So if your parents talked about money in a certain way, but then you witnessed it not actualizing, like witnessed something else happening, generates confusion, and confusion is a very powerful way to generate fear and anxiety around any subject. So once again, another way to program your mind and your subconscious to not like money, and think of it as something that you wouldn't necessarily want to deal with. We do learn the fundamentals of money management from our parents, who in turn learned it from theirs. Now, some of this might be very useful, but unfortunately, a lot of these models might be hopelessly outdated as well, even though they might have been solid like 30 years ago, might be hopelessly outdated. Then there's also a strong degree of role modeling that starts programming when you grow up. So, for example, which parent handled money in your family? Like, did you go to your father or did you go to your mom for pocket money? As an example, once again, if let's say you're a girl and you go to your mom and you ask for pocket money, and the response is like, no, go ask your dad for money, like he handles money. Now, if this kind of a pattern repeats, and the girl associates the dad with being the person who handles money, now that's a very easy way to create a strong association with it. So in her world, males and fathers then start becoming the figures who handle money. So later in life, it's very likely that is going to affect and influence her partner selection, because if in her world, moms, and in other words, women do not really handle money, and if she doesn't really have any money, then she needs to choose a partner who does, because otherwise both are going to be broke. Once again, in a very simplified example, but these kind of models, like, they stay with us. I can still remember personally going into my father's office room and watching him do an online banking thing, and this is 90s. So he actually did online banking on a modem connection, like one of these super old school ones. So and he was always the one who handled money in our family. So it's no wonder that I became, of all the of everyone in our blood family, in our immediate family, and like cousins and stuff, like it's no wonder that through some kind of an association like that, I became very interested in finances, and I became the financial brain of the family. 3, significant life events. This is once again, like now you might be in your teens already, or in your early adulthood. So personal experiences. For example, if you've made an investment and lost a lot of money, the pain associated might prevent you from ever making an investment again. So if you get traumatized by an experience, you're unlikely to search for said experience again. Now, there might be, it might have not happened to you, it might happen to someone close to you. For example, if your grandpa might have bet and lost the farm in a poker game. If so, thank you, by the way. Your neighbor might have won in a lottery and became a dick. And then you associate that, okay, a lot of money means that you're going to become a dick. On that note, most likely the neighbor was a dick already, but more money just helps his dickness manifest louder. Skeletons in a closet types of situations. So if you've had a dispute over inheritance with, for example, a sibling or with a close relative, then if you've had a personal relationship damaged because of a fight over money, once again, you start associating more and more anxiety over money. All of these experiences are very real to us. However, the rules we adopt from an experience such as this might only really be relevant there. So we might learn a pattern from grandpa losing the farm in a poker game, and we might take that as gospel and apply principles that we learn from experiencing that everywhere, and it just doesn't apply. So that is the challenge and the problem. The 6 different poker personas, not poker personas, money personas. Like folders in your subconscious, none is better than the other. We all have a degree of all of these. However, 1 or 2 are likely dominant, with a couple of others also more applicable than others. But all these 6 that I'm about to present are alive and well to some degree inside all of us. So let's go through them. Oh yeah, becoming aware of these is the first step in changing it, if you so wish, as I stated earlier. Number 1, the reckless spender. All of these personas have pros and cons. The reckless spender, the strength of this persona is that reckless spender is strong-willed, willing to work hard, and strong reckless spenders usually make good entrepreneurs, and they're usually fighters. Like they'll fight to get what they want. Cons: prone for instant gratification. Status is important. Like they need the latest iPhone. It's more important to have the latest iPhone rather than just having a working iPhone. Cash flow is insufficient for generating wealth through a surplus, because money gets spent easily. So this is the money persona number 1. And to varying degrees, this reckless spender is alive in all of us. Number 2, the avoider. And there's actually 2 subtypes of the avoider. The first subtype is the brainiac. Usually a highly educated career person with a solid income, but so immersed in professional world that generating wealth doesn't really feel important. It's just not really interesting, and everything is fine anyway, so why bother? The other subtype is the former reckless spender, who got traumatized by generating a lot of debt in his or her former life, and solves that problem by just becoming avoidant around money. Pros: usually avoiders don't have big money problems unless they have somehow generated large amounts of debt. For example, if the former reckless spender still has a lot of debt, then this doesn't apply. But otherwise, usually avoiders don't have big money problems. And especially the brainiac has great potential for building wealth, but just lacking action and needs action. Cons: not really interested in the numbers of it, not relevant, and very often wakes up to wealth generation or generating a little later in life. Typically would happen as a result of, oh, I got an inheritance and now there's a bunch of money and I don't know what to do with it, so now I'm forced to at least give it some thought. Number 3, the saver. And I hope the translation makes sense. By the saver, I mean a person who likes to save money, not invest it, but save and just pile it like Scrooge McDuck would. Pros: has a lot of patience, probably has a strong financial surplus, and usually already has a sizable nest egg to start with. Cons: very uncomfortable with taking risk, and also not comfortable with using money to enjoy life. So these are, like, I think Scrooge McDuck would be what would be a very, very cool example of a saver, because he's both filthy rich but not willing to use money for anything. So that is persona number 3. Persona number 4, the investor. Pros: solid foundation. We would probably all agree that Warren Buffett here has a solid foundation of wealth generation, and hasn't like an active touch of building wealth, actively engaging in markets, and already in the game, so to speak. Cons: the investor might lack vision, and it's very easy to get stuck in one asset class if you're like strongly an investor money persona. And the investor is also prone for getting comfortable as soon as the portfolio grows large enough. So once you're there, you don't really care that much anymore. That is money persona number 4. Money persona number 5, the gambler. Pros: incredible risk tolerance, actively engages in seeking opportunities, wanting to do things bigger, better, and faster. Cons: lack of safety net, and might be more hooked to the risk than the actual results. So the thrill of the game is the motivation rather than the results. And also, gamblers tend to underestimate the consequences of risks realizing. This is money persona number 5. And finally, the money persona number 6, the monk. And the monk is kind of an extreme avoider, so taking the avoidance to so far that money doesn't matter like at all anymore. Pros of this persona is that money isn't a core part of a monk's identity in any way. It's not emotionally attached, so it's better to make decisions from that kind of a place rather than emotional attachment. Now, cons is that monks are usually broke. So here was a brief introduction to the psychology of how the personal money story starts forming in our subconscious, starting in childhood and continuing as we grow older. These are all automatic programs that are running our life today. Becoming aware of them is the first step if you want to improve something. And in all of us, we have a varying degree of all of these 6 different money personas who are also running the game. However, 1 or 2 of these will be more dominant than the others. So as a beginning of the conversation, I would actually like to take 2 minutes to do an exercise with everyone. So which of these personas resonated most with you? Would it be the reckless spender, the avoider, the saver, the investor, the gambler, or the monk? Which one of these resonates with you the most? And also think of one or two reasons why. I'll time a couple of minutes, and once we've had a couple of minutes to think about this, we can unmute ourselves and begin the conversation through discussing our money persona. So I'll put the timer on, and in a couple of minutes we can unmute and take it from there. So there we go. 2 minutes.